Get that black bride out of my parlor and send her to the kitchen where she belongs, the silver-haired matron shrieked, pointing a jeweled finger at the trembling woman clutching a worn carpet bag. The dusty frontier town had orchestrated this mail-order bride arrangement as cruel entertainment, expecting the black woman to scrub floors until she disappeared into obscurity. But 3 floors above, behind mahogany doors, the territory's most powerful rancher lay dying from a mysterious wasting disease that had defeated every doctor for hundreds of miles. His death would collapse the local economy and leave thousands jobless. Yet hidden in the woman's calloused hands lay knowledge passed down through generations. Knowledge that could either save the dying man's life and transform her into one of the territory's wealthiest landowners, or seal her fate as a scapegoat for his inevitable demise. Will her forbidden wisdom be recognized before it's too late? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The stagecoach wheels kicked up clouds of red dust as they rolled into Copper Ridge, Arizona territory. Eponia Langston clutched her worn carpetbag tighter, peering through the small window at the sprawling ranch buildings ahead. Her letter from Thomas Whitfield had promised marriage and a new life. The reality waiting for her would be far different. Young men gathered around the coach, snickering and elbowing each other. Their grins held no warmth. One of them stepped forward as Eppie climbed down from the coach, her traveling dress wrinkled from the long journey. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in." "Thomas Whitfield?" Eppie asked, scanning the faces around her. The men burst into laughter. "Thomas? He's been dead 3 years, lady. This whole thing was just for fun." Eppie's stomach dropped. The cruel joke became clear as their laughter echoed across the dusty yard. She had traveled over 1,000 miles for nothing more than their entertainment. A sharp voice cut through the commotion. "What is this nonsense in my courtyard?" Madeline Hartwell emerged from the main house like a queen surveying her domain. Her silver hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her black dress spoke of wealth and authority. Her eyes swept over Eppie with obvious distaste. "Just a little prank, Mrs. Hartwell. Mail-order bride looking for a dead man." Madeline's lips curved into a cold smile. "How amusing. Well, since you're here, you might as well make yourself useful. The kitchen needs help, and I suppose even you can scrub pots." Eppie straightened her shoulders. "I came here in good faith, ma'am. I have skills beyond kitchen work." "Skills?" Madeline's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "The only skill you need is knowing your place. Joshua." A weathered man approached from the stables. Joshua Eldridge had the look of someone who had earned his position through hard work rather than birth. His eyes met Eppie's with something that might have been sympathy. "Show her to the kitchen quarters. She can start earning her keep immediately." Joshua nodded. "Yes, ma'am. This way." As they walked toward the back of the house, Joshua spoke quietly. "Don't let them break your spirit. This place has a way of testing people." The kitchen was spacious but chaotic. Pots sat unwashed, herbs scattered without organization, and supplies mixed together in hopeless confusion. Eppie surveyed the mess with growing understanding. These people needed help more than they realized. "How long has it been like this?" she asked. "Since the last cook left 6 months ago. Nobody wants to work here anymore." "Why not?" Joshua glanced toward the main house. "The master's been sick for over a year. Real sick. Some say the place is cursed." Eppie began organizing the scattered herbs, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. Sage, thyme, chamomile. Each plant held potential for healing that these people couldn't see. "What kind of sick?" "Wasting away. Can't keep food down, shakes like a leaf, hair falling out. 3 doctors came through. All of them gave up." Eppie's hands stilled over a bundle of wilted parsley. Those symptoms painted a familiar picture, one her grandmother had taught her to recognize in the mining camps of her childhood. "Mercury poisoning," she whispered. "What's that?" Before she could answer, Madeline's voice rang through the kitchen. "I don't pay you to stand around chatting. Get to work." The next 3 days blurred together in endless scrubbing, cooking, and enduring Madeline's sharp comments. But Eppie learned much during those days. She learned that Cyrus Whitfield owned the largest ranch in the territory. She learned that his illness had the entire town on edge, because his death would mean economic collapse for everyone. She learned that Madeline had been his late wife's cousin, taking over household management after the tragedy. Most importantly, she learned that the man upstairs was dying from something entirely preventable. On the fourth morning, Dr. Harrison emerged from Cyrus's room shaking his head. Eppie watched from the kitchen doorway as he spoke to Madeline in hushed tones. "I've done everything possible. He has perhaps 2 weeks remaining. I'm sorry." The doctor's departure left the house in heavy silence. Servants whispered in corners about finding new employment. Joshua sat at the kitchen table, his weathered face showing the weight of knowing his world was about to crumble. "What will happen to everyone?" Eppie asked. "Ranch will go to the bank. Town will dry up. Most folks will have to move on." Eppie dried her hands on her apron. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, teaching her about the silver mines and the slow poison that killed men from the inside out. The symptoms Dr. Harrison had described to Madeline matched perfectly. "Joshua, I need to tell you something." He looked up with tired eyes. "I think I know what's wrong with Mr. Whitfield, and I think I can help him." Joshua stared at her for a long moment. "You're talking about going against 3 trained doctors. I'm talking about saving a man's life. Madeline will never listen to you. Then we make her listen." The weight of her decision settled over Eppie like a heavy cloak. She could stay quiet, finish her kitchen work, and disappear when the ranch collapsed. Or she could risk everything on knowledge passed down through generations of women who had learned healing through necessity rather than medical school. Her grandmother's words came back to her. "Sometimes the most powerful medicine comes from the most unexpected hands." Joshua stared at Eppie across the kitchen table. The weight of her words hung between them like morning fog over the mountains. "You really think you know what's killing him?" Eppie nodded. "Mercury poisoning. I've seen it before in the mining camps where I grew up. The symptoms match exactly. 3 doctors couldn't figure it out. 3 doctors never lived in a place where mercury killed miners every month." Joshua rubbed his weathered face. "Even if you're right, Madeline won't listen to kitchen help." "Then we go to Mr. Whitfield directly." The conversation ended abruptly as Madeline's heels clicked across the wooden floor. Her eyes swept the kitchen with their usual disapproval before settling on Eppie. "The breakfast dishes are still dirty." Eppie stood slowly. "Mrs. Hartwell, I need to speak with you about Mr. Whitfield's condition." Madeline's eyebrows rose in disbelief. "Excuse me?" "I believe I know what's making him sick." The silence stretched like a taut rope. Then Madeline began to laugh, a sound sharp enough to cut glass. "You? A kitchen servant thinks she knows better than trained physicians?" "I've seen these symptoms before, in the silver mines back home. Men died from mercury poisoning with exactly the same signs." Madeline's laughter died abruptly. "How dare you presume to diagnose anything? You're here to wash dishes and scrub floors." "I'm here because someone played a cruel joke. But now I can help save a man's life. Get back to your work before I throw you out entirely." Eppie didn't move. "He's dying from something treatable. All I need is a chance to examine him properly." "Absolutely not." Joshua cleared his throat. "Ma'am, what harm could it do? The doctors have given up." Madeline whirled on him. "You're taking her side?" "I'm taking the side of keeping this ranch alive." The argument might have continued, but a weak voice called from upstairs. Cyrus Whitfield was awake and asking for water. Madeline hurried upstairs with Joshua following. Eppie waited exactly 3 minutes before climbing the servants' stairs. She found them in a bedroom that spoke of former grandeur, now touched by sickness. Heavy curtains blocked most of the sunlight. The air smelled of medicine and death. Cyrus Whitfield lay propped against pillows, his once powerful frame reduced to skin and bones. His hair had thinned to wisps, and his hand shook as he reached for a water glass. When he saw Eppie in the doorway, his eyes showed curiosity rather than anger. "Who's this?" Madeline moved to block Eppie's view. "Nobody important. Kitchen help." "She has something to say about your condition." Joshua interjected. Cyrus studied Epi with eyes that still held intelligence despite his physical decline. "What's your name?" "Aponia Langston, sir. But everyone calls me Epi." "What do you think is wrong with me?" "Epi?" Madeline stepped forward. "Cyrus, you shouldn't encourage this nonsense." He raised a trembling hand. "3 doctors have failed me. Let her speak." Epi moved closer to the bed. "Your symptoms match mercury poisoning perfectly. The weight loss, hair falling out, trembling hands, nausea. I've seen it kill miners who worked around mercury without protection." "Mercury?" Cyrus's voice was barely a whisper. "It builds up in your body over time, makes you sick slowly. But it can be treated if caught soon enough." "How would mercury get into my system?" "Could be in your food, your water, even things you touch regularly. The source needs to be found and eliminated. Then your body can heal itself with the right herbs and care." Cyrus was quiet for a long moment. His eyes moved between Epi, Madeline, and Joshua. The room felt heavy with unspoken possibilities. "The doctors said I had weeks to live. They were looking for disease. This is poisoning. Different problem, different solution." Madeline stepped between them again. "Cyrus, you can't seriously be considering this. What choice do I have? Die according to the doctor's schedule? Or let her try something different? She's not trained. She's not qualified." "Neither were the women who kept miners alive in the camps where I grew up," Epi said quietly. "My grandmother treated mercury poisoning for 30 years. She taught me everything she knew." Cyrus struggled to sit up straighter. His voice grew stronger despite his physical weakness. "If you save my life, what do you want in return?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. Epi felt the weight of her answer could change everything, not just for her, but for everyone whose livelihood depended on this ranch. "I want the chance to prove that healing comes from knowledge, not just from fancy degrees." "That's not enough." Cyrus's eyes held a strange intensity. "If you cure me when trained doctors failed, you deserve more than just satisfaction." He turned to Joshua. "You witnessed my conversation with the lawyer about inheritance matters." Joshua nodded slowly. "If this woman saves my life, she gets half ownership of this ranch." The words hit the room like lightning. Madeline gasped. Joshua's eyes widened. Epi felt the floor shift beneath her feet. "Cyrus." "You can't be serious," Madeline whispered. "I'm dying anyway according to the doctors. What difference does it make?" "Everything," Epi breathed. "It makes all the difference." The kitchen servant, who had arrived as the target of a cruel joke, now stood on the threshold of becoming one of the territory's largest landowners. All she had to do was save the life of a man that 3 trained doctors had already given up on. Cyrus extended his trembling hand toward her. "Do we have an agreement?" Epi looked at that outstretched hand, knowing that touching it would change her life forever. Behind Cyrus, Madeline's face had gone pale as winter snow. Joshua watched with the intensity of a man whose entire world hung in the balance. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility and consequence. Then Epi reached out and grasped Cyrus's hand with both of hers. "We have an agreement." The handshake that sealed Epi's fate lasted only seconds, but its implications would echo through the entire territory. Joshua served as witness while Madeline stood frozen in disbelief. Half the Whitfield ranch now hung in the balance of Epi's medical knowledge. Within hours, Epi had transformed Cyrus's sick room. She threw open the heavy curtains, letting sunlight flood the space for the first time in months. Fresh air replaced the stagnant smell of medicine and despair. "First step is stopping the poison from entering your system," she explained to Cyrus as she examined his belongings. "Then we flush out what's already there." Her hands moved methodically through his personal items. The silver mirror showed traces of mercury residue around its edges. His favorite drinking cup had similar deposits. Even his shaving implements carried the telltale signs. "How long have you been using these items?" The mirror was a gift from Madeline about a year ago. The cup, too. Epi's stomach tightened. A year matched perfectly with when his symptoms began. But she kept her suspicions to herself until she had more evidence. She began brewing her grandmother's detoxification tea from herbs she had organized in the kitchen: milk thistle for the liver, dandelion root for the kidneys, and burdock to help the body eliminate toxins. The mixture smelled earthy and bitter. "Drink this 3 times daily. It tastes terrible, but it will help your body process the mercury faster." Cyrus managed half a cup before his stomach rebelled, but he kept it down, which was more progress than he had made with food in weeks. Word of the strange arrangement spread through the ranch like wildfire. Servants whispered in corners about the kitchen woman who might become their new boss. Ranch hands gathered near the bunkhouse, debating whether Cyrus had lost his mind along with his health. Town folks began arriving by the second day. They came with questions, concern, and barely concealed panic about their economic future. The general store owner, the blacksmith, the school teacher, all their livelihoods depended on the Whitfield Ranch continuing to operate. "Is it true?" asked Martha Chen, who ran the boarding house. "Did he really promise you half the ranch?" Epi continued preparing Cyrus's evening dose of medicine. "He promised it if I save his life. And if you can't, then everyone's problems get much worse." By the third day, Cyrus showed his first real signs of improvement. His hands shook less when reaching for water. He managed to eat a full bowl of broth without nausea. His color had improved from gray to pale. But something else was happening that troubled Epi. Despite her careful control over his food and medicine, Cyrus experienced mysterious setbacks. Just when he seemed to be gaining strength, he would suddenly worsen for no apparent reason. She began watching more carefully. Every person who entered his room, every meal delivered to his bedside, every cup of water brought for his medicine. The pattern became clear on the 4th day. Cyrus's worst episodes always occurred within hours of Madeline visiting him. The woman who had managed his household for months had unlimited access to everything he consumed. Epi started testing. She prepared 2 identical doses of medicine, marking one secretly. The marked dose went to Cyrus after Madeline's visits. The unmarked dose went to him when Madeline was elsewhere in the house. The results chilled her. Cyrus improved steadily with the unmarked medicine. The marked doses, the ones available during Madeline's visits, either had no effect or made him worse. Someone was sabotaging his recovery. Someone with intimate access to his room and his treatment. That evening, Epi searched the house while others slept. She moved through rooms like a shadow, looking for evidence of mercury sources. The kitchen revealed nothing suspicious. The parlor and dining room were clean. But Madeline's private quarters told a different story. Hidden behind expensive dresses in her wardrobe, Epi found a small wooden box. Inside lay bottles of mercury compounds, more than enough to slowly poison someone over many months. Notes in Madeline's handwriting detailed dosages and timing. The truth hit Epi like a physical blow. This wasn't accidental poisoning from contaminated items. Madeline had been deliberately killing Cyrus, probably planning to inherit as his closest remaining family member. The mail-order bride prank suddenly made terrible sense. Madeline had encouraged the young men's cruel joke, expecting to use Epi as a scapegoat when Cyrus finally died. The blame would fall on the outsider, the kitchen servant who had tried to treat him. But Epi's unexpected success had ruined everything. Now Madeline faced losing not just her inheritance scheme, but potentially half the ranch to the woman she had planned to frame. Epi carefully documented everything: the hidden mercury, the timing of Cyrus's setbacks, the pattern of visits and symptoms. Her grandmother had taught her that accusations without proof were worthless, especially coming from someone society refused to take seriously. She needed more evidence before confronting anyone. But now she understood why her treatment worked inconsistently. She wasn't just fighting mercury poisoning. She was fighting active, ongoing poisoning by someone Cyrus trusted completely. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Legal representatives from the territorial capital had arrived to verify Cyrus's mental competency regarding the ranch ownership agreement. Word of the unusual arrangement had reached official ears. "Mr. Whitfield, are you certain this agreement reflects your true wishes?" asked the lead attorney. "Cyrus, looking stronger than he had in months thanks to Epi's treatment, nodded firmly, completely certain. This woman diagnosed what 3 doctors missed. If she saves my life, she deserves half of everything I own. And if she fails, then you can divide my estate according to my existing will. Madeline stood in the corner, her face a mask of barely controlled emotion. Epi watched her carefully, noting how her hands trembled when the lawyers spoke about the ownership transfer. That afternoon, Epi made a crucial decision. She prepared a special batch of Cyrus's medicine, but this time she added a harmless ingredient that would change color if exposed to mercury compounds. If someone was still trying to poison him, this would provide definitive proof. She gave the medicine to Cyrus personally, then retreated to watch from a hidden position. Within an hour, Madeline entered his room carrying a tea service. She stayed for 20 minutes, fussing over his comfort and adjusting his pillows. After Madeline left, Epi rushed to check the medicine bottle. The clear liquid had turned a distinctive blue-green color. Someone had added mercury compounds to his treatment while she was gone. The evidence was finally complete. Madeline wasn't just failing to help Cyrus recover, she was actively trying to kill him while making it look like Epi's treatment had failed. But now, Epi faced a terrible choice. She could confront Madeline directly, risking violence or desperate action. She could tell Cyrus, potentially shocking him into a relapse, or she could build an even stronger case, gambling that she could protect him long enough to expose the truth. The weight of her decision pressed down like a mountain. Half a ranch hung in the balance, along with the lives of everyone who depended on it. But most importantly, a good man's life remained in immediate danger from someone he trusted completely. As evening shadows lengthened across the ranch, Epi prepared for what might be the most important night of her life. Epi spent the night documenting everything she had discovered. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory about the importance of evidence over accusations. She sketched the locations where she had found mercury residue. She recorded the exact times of Cyrus's setbacks and matched them to Madeline's visits. Most importantly, she carefully preserved the blue-green medicine as proof of ongoing poisoning. By dawn, she had assembled a case that would convince any reasonable person. The pattern was too clear to dismiss as coincidence. But first, she needed to protect Cyrus from further harm. She prepared his morning medicine in her own quarters, keeping it with her at all times. When she brought it to his room, she found him sitting up in bed looking more alert than he had in months. "I feel stronger today," he said, accepting the cup with steady hands. "That's because nobody tampered with your medicine last night." Cyrus studied her face carefully. "What do you mean?" "I mean, someone has been adding mercury to your treatments. Someone who wants you to die, despite my efforts to save you." The color drained from Cyrus's improved complexion. "Who would do such a thing?" Epi moved to the window, checking to ensure they were alone. "Someone who stands to gain from your death. Someone with unlimited access to your room and your food. Madeline." The name came out as barely a whisper. "I have proof. Physical evidence. Documentation of timing. Everything needed to make the case." Cyrus sank back against his pillows, the weight of betrayal hitting him harder than his illness ever had. "She's been like family to me. I trusted her completely. That trust gave her the perfect opportunity." "How long?" "Based on the mercury I found in her room, probably since she gave you that silver mirror. Almost a year of slow poisoning." Cyrus closed his eyes, processing the magnitude of the betrayal. When he opened them again, something had changed. The confusion and weakness were gone, replaced by the steel that had built his ranch empire. "What do we do?" "We confront her carefully, with witnesses, with evidence she can't deny. And then we let justice take its course." They spent the morning preparing. Epi gathered all her evidence into a leather satchel. Cyrus, despite his recovering state, insisted on dressing in his best clothes for what might be the most important conversation of his life. Joshua arrived at noon as requested. His weathered face showed concern when he saw the serious expressions waiting for him. "We need you to witness something important," Cyrus said. "What kind of something?" "The kind that will change everything." They arranged themselves in Cyrus's sitting room. Eppie positioned her evidence on a small table where everyone could see it clearly. Cyrus sat in his favorite chair, looking more like the powerful rancher he had once been. Joshua stood near the door, ready to prevent anyone from leaving. "Send for Madeline," Cyrus instructed. When Madeline entered the room, her eyes immediately went to the evidence displayed on the table. For just a moment, her composed mask slipped, revealing something that looked like panic. "What's all this about?" "Sit down, Madeline." She remained standing, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I have duties to attend to. Your only duty right now is explaining why you've been trying to kill me." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Madeline's face went through a series of expressions before settling on indignant denial. "How dare you suggest such a thing?" Eppie reached for the first piece of evidence. "Mercury compounds found hidden in your bedroom, more than enough to poison someone slowly over many months." "I have no idea how those got there. Notes in your handwriting documenting dosages and timing. Anyone could have forged those." Cyrus leaned forward in his chair. "The medicine that changed color when you added mercury to it yesterday." "How do you explain that?" Madeline's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand. This ranch should have been mine. I've sacrificed everything for this family." "So, you decided to murder me for it? You were supposed to die quietly. The doctor said you would, but then she came along and ruined everything." The confession spilled out like water through a broken dam. Years of resentment, plans for inheritance, the mail-order bride scheme designed to create a scapegoat for Cyrus's death. "I arranged that whole prank. Those boys thought it was their idea, but I suggested it. I needed someone to blame when you finally died." Joshua stepped closer to the door, ensuring Madeline couldn't escape. "So you would have let Eppie hang for your crime?" She wasn't supposed to be able to help him. Nobody expected kitchen help to know about medicine. Eppie felt a strange calm settling over her. The truth was finally out. Justice could finally be served. The mercury in the mirror you gave him, the poisoned cups, even contaminating his medicine when I wasn't watching. How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day his wife died and left me with nothing but a servant's position in my own cousin's house." Cyrus struggled to his feet, anger giving him strength. "Elizabeth trusted you. We both did. Trust doesn't pay bills or secure futures." The room fell silent, except for the sound of Madeline's ragged breathing. The weight of her confession settled over everyone like a heavy blanket. "What happens now?" Joshua asked quietly. Cyrus looked at Eppie, then at the evidence spread across the table. "Now we do what should have been done months ago. We get the sheriff. We present the evidence. We let the law handle this properly." "And the ranch agreement?" "Stands exactly as promised. Eppie saved my life by discovering the truth. She's earned every acre." Madeline laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You're going to make a former slave richer than most white men in the territory. I'm going to honor my word to the woman who exposed your murderous scheme." The transformation was complete. Eppie had arrived as the target of a cruel joke. She had become the key to exposing a murder plot. Now she stood on the verge of becoming one of the most powerful landowners in Arizona territory. But first, justice needed to be served. Sheriff Tom Bradley arrived within the hour, his weathered face grim as he listened to the accusations. Behind him came Deputy Mills and the territorial prosecutor, drawn by the gravity of attempted murder charges against one of the region's prominent families. Eppie laid out her evidence methodically. The hidden mercury bottles. Madeline's handwritten notes detailing poisoning schedules. The contaminated personal items. The medicine that had changed color when exposed to additional mercury compounds. "This represents months of careful documentation," she explained to the gathered officials. "The pattern is clear and undeniable." Sheriff Bradley examined each piece of evidence with the thoroughness of a man who had seen too many crimes go unpunished due to sloppy investigation. The mercury bottles still contained residue that matched the compounds found in Cyrus's belongings. Madeline's notes provided a timeline that aligned perfectly with the progression of his illness. "Mrs. Hartwell, do you have anything to say in response to these accusations?" Madeline sat rigidly in her chair. her earlier confession now replaced by stubborn silence. The reality of legal consequences had clearly struck home. "I want to speak with an attorney before saying anything else." "That's your right," the prosecutor acknowledged. "But we have sufficient evidence to proceed with charges based on what's already been presented." Cyrus struggled to stand as the officials prepared to take Madeline into custody. Despite everything she had done to him, watching her face the consequences of her actions brought him no satisfaction. "Sheriff, I want to ensure she receives proper legal representation. I'll pay for a competent attorney." Everyone in the room stared at him. Madeline's eyes widened in disbelief. "Why would you do that?" "Because justice done properly serves everyone better than revenge." The wisdom in his words resonated through the room. Epi felt a deep respect for the man whose life she had saved. Even in the face of betrayal and attempted murder, he chose the path of fairness over vindictiveness. As Madeline was led away, she turned back once to look at Epi. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. This territory doesn't welcome your kind in positions of power. Then maybe it's time for the territory to change." The legal proceedings that followed moved swiftly by frontier standards. The evidence was overwhelming, and Madeline's initial confession in front of witnesses left little room for doubt. Her attorney, paid for by Cyrus as promised, focused on securing a fair sentence rather than contesting her guilt. During the 3-day trial, the full scope of Madeline's plan became clear. She had researched mercury poisoning carefully, choosing it specifically because the symptoms mimicked wasting diseases that doctors often couldn't diagnose. The mail-order bride prank had been orchestrated months in advance, designed to provide a convenient scapegoat when Cyrus finally died. She planned every detail except for one, the prosecutor noted in his closing statement. She never anticipated that her intended scapegoat would possess the knowledge to expose her crime. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty of attempted murder in the first degree, the sentence was 10 years in the territorial prison with the possibility of early release for good behavior. As the verdict was read, Epi felt no joy in Madeline's downfall. Justice had been served, but it came at the cost of destroying someone who had once been trusted family. The ranch ownership transfer proceeded immediately after the trial concluded. Legal documents were signed in the courthouse with the same officials who had witnessed Madeline's conviction serving as witnesses to Epi's transformation. "Miss Langston, you now own half of the largest ranch in Arizona territory," the clerk announced as he stamped the final papers. The words felt surreal. 1 week earlier, she had been scrubbing kitchen floors and enduring cruel jokes. Now she controlled thousands of acres and employed dozens of people whose livelihoods depended on her decisions. But the real transformation came in how others treated her. Ranch hands who had ignored her presence now approached with respectful nods and requests for guidance. Town merchants who had looked through her now sought her business with eager smiles. The same people who had laughed at the mail-order bride prank now competed for her attention. "Power changes how people see you," Joshua observed as they walked through the main street of Copper Ridge. "But it doesn't change who you are underneath." "My grandmother always said that respect earned through fear doesn't last. Respect earned through competence does." Cyrus had recovered remarkably once the mercury poisoning stopped. His strength returned gradually, along with his hair and healthy color. More importantly, his perspective had shifted fundamentally. "I spent years thinking I understood how this territory worked," he admitted during one of their evening discussions about ranch management. "Turns out I was blind to things that were right in front of me." "Like what?" "Like judging people by their circumstances instead of their capabilities. Like assuming that formal education was the only kind that mattered. Like thinking that the way things had always been was the way they should stay." Their partnership developed naturally. Cyrus brought decades of business experience and territorial connections. Epi contributed fresh perspectives and a deep understanding of practical medicine that the region desperately needed. "What do you want to do with your half?" he asked. Epi had been thinking about that question since the moment she signed the ownership papers. The answer came from the same place that had driven her to save Cyrus's life despite the risk. "I want to establish a medical training center. Teach people the kind of healing knowledge that doctors' schools don't cover. Show them that medicine comes from understanding, not just from fancy degrees. Cyrus smiled, the first genuinely happy expression she had seen from him. That sounds exactly right. The news of their plans spread throughout the territory within days. A former kitchen servant turned landowner was revolutionary enough. A former kitchen servant planning to challenge established medical practices was practically unprecedented. But Epi had learned something important during her weeks at the ranch. Sometimes the most powerful changes came from the most unexpected sources. Sometimes justice required patience and evidence rather than anger and accusation. And sometimes the people society dismissed held the keys to solving problems that experts couldn't handle. 6 months had transformed the Whitfield Ranch from a place shadowed by death into a beacon of hope for the entire territory. The sound of construction filled the air as workers put finishing touches on the medical training center that would soon open its doors to students from across the region. Epi stood on the porch of her new house, built on her half of the property, watching the bustle of activity. The building rising before her represented everything her grandmother had dreamed of but never lived to see. A place where traditional healing knowledge would be taught alongside modern medicine, where students would learn that wisdom came from many sources. "The first class is already full," Cyrus announced, joining her on the porch. His recovery had been complete, leaving him stronger and more energetic than he had been in years. 20 students from 7 different territories, including 3 who traveled here from back east. What about local interest? Half the spots went to people from right here in Copper Ridge. Martha Chen's daughter signed up. So did the blacksmith's son and 2 of the ranch hands' wives. The integration of local students with those from distant places had been Epi's specific intention. She wanted to prove that healing knowledge could bridge all kinds of divides. The training center represented only part of the changes sweeping through the region. Epi had also established a free clinic in town, staffed by herself and 2 other practitioners who shared her philosophy about accessible medical care. The combination of traditional remedies with careful observation had already saved dozens of lives. Word of her success had spread far beyond Arizona territory. Medical schools in Chicago and Philadelphia had sent representatives to observe her methods. Several had offered her positions as guest lecturers, opportunities that would have been unthinkable for someone of her background just months earlier. "Dr. Harrison wants to enroll in the first class," Cyrus mentioned with obvious amusement. Dr. Harrison was the same physician who had declared Cyrus's case hopeless and given him weeks to live. His request to study under Epi represented a profound shift in how the medical establishment viewed her work. What did you tell him? That he would have to apply like everyone else. No special treatment for fancy degrees. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. A carriage arrived bearing official territorial government markings. The passenger who emerged was Governor Morrison himself, accompanied by his chief medical advisor. "Miss Langston, I've heard remarkable things about your work here." Epi welcomed them into the main house, where Cyrus joined the discussion. The governor's visit wasn't merely social. He had come with a formal proposition. "The territorial government wants to fund expansion of your medical training program. We're prepared to offer significant financial support in exchange for establishing similar centers in Phoenix and Tucson." The offer was generous enough to ensure the program's success throughout the territory, but Epi had learned to examine opportunities carefully for hidden costs. What would be the conditions of such support? Complete autonomy over curriculum and student selection. "We're not interested in controlling your methods. We're interested in results." The conversation continued for 2 hours, covering details about funding, staffing, and expansion timelines. By the time the governor's carriage disappeared down the dusty road, Epi had committed to a program that would train hundreds of medical practitioners using her integrated approach. That evening brought another significant development. A knock at the door revealed Madeline Hartwell, thinner and grayer than she had been 6 months earlier, but carrying herself with a dignity that imprisonment hadn't broken. "I was released early for good behavior," she explained when Cyrus invited her inside. "I came to ask your forgiveness." The conversation that followed was painful but necessary. Madeline spoke honestly about the resentment and fear that had driven her to attempted murder. Years of feeling invisible and unappreciated had twisted her perspective until she saw violence as her only path to security. I convinced myself that I deserved something for all my sacrifices, but I was wrong about what I deserved and how to get it. Epi studied the woman who had tried to frame her for murder. 6 months of consequences had clearly changed Madeline's outlook fundamentally. What will you do now? I want to help with the women's health program you're starting, if you'll have me. The request surprised everyone in the room. Madeline's knowledge of household management and her connections throughout the territory could be valuable assets for expanding medical care to isolated communities. Why would you want to work with me? Because I learned something in prison. Real security comes from contributing something valuable, not from taking what belongs to others. Cyrus and Epi exchanged glances. Both had suffered from Madeline's actions, but both had also seen how forgiveness could be more powerful than punishment. You can start by helping organize the mobile clinic program, Epi decided. We'll see how things develop from there. The following months validated every decision they had made. The medical training center graduated its first class to widespread acclaim. Students returned to their home communities carrying knowledge that saved lives and changed local healthcare standards. The mobile clinic program reached isolated ranches and mining camps that had never seen qualified medical care. Most importantly, the success of their integrated approach began changing attitudes throughout the territory. People who had once dismissed traditional healing methods now sought them out. Medical professionals who had scoffed at remedies passed down through generations now studied them seriously. Epi's transformation from dismissed kitchen servant to respected medical educator had become a symbol of possibility throughout the region. Her story spread to other territories, inspiring similar programs and challenging assumptions about who could contribute to medical knowledge. On the first anniversary of her arrival in Copper Ridge, Epi stood before a graduating class of 30 students representing every background and community in the territory. Her speech was brief, but carried the weight of everything she had learned. Healing comes from understanding, not from authority. Knowledge comes from observation, not from assumption. And the most powerful medicine is often found in the most unexpected hands. As applause filled the room, Epi saw faces that reflected the change she had helped bring about. Students who would return to their communities as bridges between traditional wisdom and modern methods. Graduates who would judge treatments by their effectiveness rather than their source. The woman who had arrived as the target of a cruel joke had become the catalyst for transformation that would benefit generations. Her grandmother's healing knowledge, nearly lost to prejudice and dismissal, would now live on through hundreds of trained practitioners across the American West. The kitchen where she had once scrubbed floors now served as a preparation area for medicines that would heal the sick throughout the territory. The ranch that had nearly died with its owner now thrived as a center of learning and hope. Sometimes the most powerful changes came from the most unexpected sources. Sometimes justice emerged not through revenge, but through the patient application of wisdom and truth, and sometimes the people society was quickest to dismiss held the keys to problems that experts couldn't solve.